Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gaming Daddy channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So today we're just going to be having a conversation, very laid back and chill conversation. If you're driving, put your cell phone away, maybe plug your your phone into your auxiliary jack and just listen, because I feel like as a Division community we have to pay attention to these things, because from time to time it really does feel grim. The Division has always had that grim feeling around it. And what do I mean? Even from the days of the Division 1, especially when the game was around its end of life, it was quite challenging to stay positive. It was very hard to put things in perspective because we didn't know a lot. Many of us thought the Division 1 in some aspect failed for the general audience. For us, it was a win nonetheless, because we still played the game regardless of people playing the game or not. I played that game so much. In fact, in my house, my children played Division Agents for dress up. That's how much this game has been a part of our entire, world. I mean, because also I make YouTube content around the game, which is part of my, my side gig and side hustle, whatever it is. And so that's very interesting that the game is a landmark game. And so learning about the game, learning about its development process is very, very critical. And I enjoy sharing a lot of those things with the community. And, we have our conversations back and forth. So what do I have here today? What am I going to be, ranting about? I'm going to be ranting about one major question, and that is, where are our developers? Where are the developers that have worked on the Division and the Division 2 at Massive right now? And can we find out what they're doing? Now, what they're doing in many cases, we don't even know. They're not going to tell us, because Ubisoft and most of their studios, especially Massive, is a very hold to the chest kind of studio. They keep information tight-lipped. You will not know anything unless they want you to know that thing, or if somebody were to leak something out there, in the public. Now, there have been leaks. There are some of the content creators in this community who, basically talk about the sources that they have within the studio. I don't have any source. I don't know any source. And honestly, I really don't want any source in the studio, to be very honest, because I like to predict these things. And, to me, it's a guessing game. If it's correct, it's an adrenaline rush. If it's wrong, I try to find out, what I may have missed. And so I enjoy that game. So let's first look at Division 1's development. Let's look at the creative director in charge of that game. His name is Magnus Jensen. He's already tied up trying to get Avatar out the window. In 2022, his game is going to be released. We don't know what's going to happen or what nature of the game it's going to be. If it's a game that's going to require live support, if it's going to be a multiplayer co-op game, we don't know anything about that. So even when that game releases, he may still be tied up, or Ubisoft Massive may pull him away and have him on another title, because he's a game shipper. He's somebody who has shipped the Division game, which is Ubisoft's fastest selling game. So I believe strongly he plays a pivotal role in that studio right now as somebody who can get the job done. So he's tied up right now, and so that's that's where he's at. More than likely, I think he's probably with a team of developers who probably worked on the Division 1 game as well, to go ahead and they had things kickstarted. They actually moved them into a new building, the Avatar team. So Ubisoft really did prioritize this particular project very heavily. Now, you move on to Division 2. The creative director of the Division 2 is Julian Garrity. His associate creative director is Yannick. Now, Julian is no longer going to be, doing anything with the Division, so as far as we know, because he announced that he's going to be pretty much leading the reins on the Star Wars game. He also shipped the Division 2, and I believe he's also a very huge, important player in the massive Ubisoft studio. He is a game shipper. People that can ship games are very important and critical to these studios. Yes, they don't do all the work, but they at least oversee the work being done. And as long as the work is done, and as long as the work is actually done properly and out there, I think that's a win for many game studios. Game development is very hard. We talk about this all the time, and I'm sure many of you understand that. Now, some gamers, will say and push back and say, but, we pay money for these products. I know we also paid money for Windows 10. Anyways, sorry, I had to throw that out there. Anyways, if you kind of put it all together, you have to look and say, okay, where did Julian Garrity actually get that promotion to actually ship a game? He was the associate director for the Division 1. And then after Division 1 was shipped, I think he eventually got put on that project to start working on Division 2 as Magnus was doing the Avatar project. Or maybe Magnus was doing Division 2, and then when they saw Avatar as a big thing, they probably swapped it around. I don't know how that worked. The only thing I know is whose name is now on the project. Now, you ask me and say the associate creative director for Division 2 naturally should have a video game that they're working on, and that's Yannick. And I think there is that possibility that Yannick might have a game that he's working on. Also note that, the Ubisoft Bucharest content, the content for Division 2 that's being made, that's going to be released down the road, is going to be supervised by him. So he's supervising the new content dropping for the Division 2. If the Division 2 is going to be continuing, I think he's going to naturally be the creative director, pretty much in practicality, because right now the creative director on paper is pretty much in the phase of creating their team and building the people that are going to be working on the Star Wars project and creating a vision for it. So I don't think he's going to be involved in this particular game. So I think Yannick is more than likely the proxy over the Division 2 right now. And if Ubisoft, who loves to continue to make games and make sequels of sequels and continue to push in a universe, is the same Ubisoft that we know, Yannick more than likely has a game project that he is going to be spearheading. And I think he is more poised than anybody else who is basically free to actually deliver a Division 3 game. Now, the reason I say that is because he's also had a lot of experience from the Division 1 and also had a lot of experience from the Division 2. In the Division 1, he worked very closely as a community proxy with the developers and the community. And also with Division 2, he also worked very closely with the creative directors and also with the community as well. He understands the way this community actually works. He knows. In fact, one thing he said in a Kotaku article one time, which it did create a little bit of buzz, he mentioned something and said, we really wanted to go with a different direction with the Division 2. And we understood that whichever direction we'd go with, many people among the player base were still going to have some issues with it. So we just decided that regardless, this is a decision we wanted to go with. And we made that decision regardless of us knowing that some people were going to complain about it. Now, you can argue and say, well, why did they go ahead and do it if they knew people weren't going to like it? I guess it's their choice when it comes to the creative freedom. And I think that's one thing about developers and artists and all of these people is many times they feel a vision is appropriate for them to go with. If you ask me and say, was the vision a 100% hit? I would say no, more like a 79 to 80%, success rate when it comes to the way the vision was executed, because it wasn't like the Dark Grim Division 1. But then, a game is a multi-dimensional product. You got to judge by gameplay, mechanics, all of those things. I think those things were a win. I think world building, the open world, everything, if you were to kind of factor out what the advancement in the game was, I think it's better than the Division 1. Yes, Division 1 is dear to our hearts. I'm going to get pushback about how the Division 1 is the best game. But go back and play Division 1 and, you're going to see that there were so many things improved upon. And yes, we have our hours in that game, and I get it. We can argue about that in a different video. So you ask and say, okay, Yannick is, coordinating some content that's being made in another studio that's in another country away from him. What else is he doing? I mean, is that all he's going to be doing? I don't think that's the case. I think there's probably more on the horizon. Again, another developer that's very, very, very fundamental to the entire Division franchise, and that's Frederick Thailander. He worked on the Division 1. I think he worked as a gameplay designer in Division 1. I'm not really certain. But on Division 2, he was a lead 3C designer. Basically, lead 3C designers do character, camera, and controls. That's basically a big part of their job. Now, they may do other things, but lead 3C means that. Character, controls, and I forgot the third thing I said just now, but you get it in the video. And so you kind of look at that and say, okay, well, what does he have to do with this? Well, a few months ago, I don't remember how many months, he put something on Twitter saying he wasn't going to be really involved in the Division at that moment. And so any questions we had, he basically advised and encouraged people to forward those concerns to other proxies. I think at that point, Johan was taking the reins as one of the community developers as well. And eventually Hamish, we got news after that Hamish was going going to be moving to another Ubisoft studio. By the way, if you don't know who these people are, Hamish is a huge central part of the community. Very pivotal to this community. Was a community developer from the Division 1 and also Division 2, and did a lot of the communication stuff with State of the Games and all of the above. And so he's very pivotal in our community. A lot of people in this community basically miss him. Yes, we gave Hamish a hard time. Some people were just rude, downright evil, if you were to ask me. And yeah, I'll say it because I know I will say, sure, I'll get the comments in the comment section. It's okay. We'll fight over there. But I think people are humans. You just basically treat people how you want to be treated. If you find yourself in a situation, that's kind of how I play it anyways. And so you think about Frederick Thailander, who's this developer. I remember him congratulating the Star Wars team and also congratulating the Avatar team. But the way he congratulated those teams, it didn't sound like, he was saying anything like, I'm excited to be working on this project. I realized that other Ubisoft developers who were working on these two projects, in many cases, would have said something. This doesn't mean all of them in Massive said anything. In fact, one of the more critical developers, Drew Reschner, who's also a developer at Massive that works on the AI on the Division, he doesn't even post anything on his Twitter. His Twitter is blank. So if you are expecting him to say he's working on something or wanting him to confirm something else, you're more than likely not going to get anything from his own direction. But Frederick, who is much more open to post about different things, and didn't necessarily say anything to that effect. I even remember a few days ago, I asked him on Twitter after he congratulated the Avatar team, and I said, hey, are you working on this project? And he didn't reply. And I thought that was quite interesting that he didn't reply. Usually, he's a very, very, friendly developer. He will engage you in conversation. He will reply to you. In fact, one time I asked him a development question and he actually answered, which is a big deal for me because I'm learning game development and learning programming. And for him to have just given me that small nugget basically saved me, I'm sure, 5 to 10 years of mistakes. And so for him not to answer, somebody else in the comments was making fun of my question because I prefaced it, or I put a caveat saying, I don't know what you guys are willing to talk about right now. And somebody mentioned and said, you would think that a lead developer knows exactly what their studio wants and doesn't want them to say. And I replied and said, it's more complicated than that. Because if he answered that question, it would either confirm or deny other things. And I think that's probably what he understood and knew and refused to even mention or even acknowledge the question. Because if he had said yes or no, that would have actually opened the door for other conversations. Because a yes would mean he's probably working on the Avatar project, and that's probably why he was pulled off the Division 2. A no would mean he was more likely working on the Star Wars project. That's why they pulled him out of the Division 2. But again, he didn't necessarily confirm that he was working on either of the projects. So my suspicion is he's probably going to be leading and playing a major role in whatever it is Yannick will probably be working on down the road. I may be wrong, though. All of this may just be conjecture, but I'm following Ubisoft very closely and the way they structure their developers within their studio. It's not clear to me. I don't know. There's not really an organizational chart that's put out there for the public to know. And the way that game development works, I think it's usually on a need basis. A creative director, will find himself over other, lead directors and lead developers. I think one time even Frederick Thailander said, one thing about in an interview, somebody was interviewing him and, they said, so does your team do this? And he said, well, as a lead director, one thing you do is you work with other directors as well. So there are directors over narrative, directors over, the open world and all of these things. Level designers also have a director above them. And all of these directors and, leads, they work together with their teams to actually bring together all what the game is about and eventually ship the product. So if you have a solid team, that's pretty much how it goes. So again, it may be that, Thailander may be working on Star Wars. And maybe that, he's working on another game with Division 3. Maybe that Yannick may not even be working on a Division game. And Ubisoft's going to announce tomorrow and say, hey, we're working on a Terminator franchise. And Yannick is going to be doing the Terminator franchise. You don't know. These are just some of the things that I believe strongly that may be going on within the studio. Now, the possibility that there's a Division game hinges on a few facts. One of them being there's a huge player base for the game. I think that's more important than many other facts if you were to, factor in all of that. And if you ask me what's the player base number even, you have to look at the 40 million people that have played the Division franchise in total. Some people don't believe that number. They say things like, oh, there's no way 40 million people have played the entire Division franchise. And I'm like, what do they have to benefit from lying about those numbers? I mean, and even if they're lying about those numbers, how many people would you say have played the Division franchise ever? I mean, do you know the number? So I think, you have to just take the official source for those statistics and say if those statistics are true, then they're going to continue to serve potentially that 40 million possible player base. And if that 40 million player base is not available, then at least 25% of that player base still guarantees them a success for another division game. Talk to you guys in another video. Let me hear your thoughts in the comment section. Peace out.